everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about LGBTQ plus books that I want to read. So I have an ever-growing TBR. That whole bookcase back there is an IKEA bookcase and it is 2 deep. So there's like the first row of books and then there's another row of books in front of them, and then there's also books stacked sideways that don't fit in the 2 rows on the shelf. So clearly I have a lot of books on my TBR and a lot of them are queer, and I thought it would be fun to talk about the LGBTQ plus books that I want to read. Well, 5 of them, and I thought that this would be perfect to do during Pride Month. So the first book I got when I was on vacation last year in Connecticut, and this book is Rick, which is by Alex Gino. So honestly, there's been a little bit of controversy with this author, if I'm being quite honest. So this author wrote a book, and I'm not even going to say the name of that book because the original name of the book was the dead name of the main character who's trans, and then the author renamed the book to Melissa. So there's been a little bit of controversy surrounding this author. However, I am looking forward to reading this one because I saw an ace pin when I got this book and I was like, I bet there's some exploration of ace identity in here. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. This one I have a signed book plate for because it looked like the author had gone and given some book plates or maybe done a book signing at the bookstore that I went to. I'm gonna read the back of this book really quickly to tell you what it's all about. Rick's never questioned much. He's gone along with his best friend Jeff, even when Jeff's acted like a bully and a jerk. He's let his father joke with him about which girls he might want to date, even though that kind of talk always makes Rick uncomfortable. In truth, he hasn't given his own identity much thought, because everyone else around him appears to have figured it out. But now Rick's got into middle school and new doors are opening. One of them leads to the school's Rainbow Spectrum Club, where kids of many genders and identities congregate, including Melissa, the girl who sits in front of Rick in class and seems to have her life together. Rick wants his own life to be like that, even if it means breaking some old friendships and making some new ones. As they did in their groundbreaking novel Melissa, in Rick, award-winning author Alex Gino explores what it means to search for your own place in the world and all the steps you and the people around you need to take in order to get where you need to be. So this one sounds really good, and it sounds like it'll be really deep and interesting, especially for a middle grade / children's book. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. It's really short, so I could probably read it really quickly. I'm hoping to get around to reading it soon because I'm really interested to see this author's take on this boy exploring his identities. The next book I have to talk about is a sequel, and this one I've heard has ace rep in it. I read the first book and then the novella following the first book because the actor, like narrator for the audiobook, is Christian Coulson, who's one of my favorite actors. He was young Tom Riddle in Chamber of Secrets. So the first book is A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and this sequel is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. So the first book had queer representation. The main character Monty in the first book didn't label his sexuality, but he was attracted to all genders. There's been like some controversy. I don't know why there's so many controversies with queer books, but there was controversy with that one because people were like, oh my gosh, this is erasing bi rep. And I was like, no, it's not erasing bi rep, it's giving unlabeled rep, you know? So I have heard that she's ace, and I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out. This series is a historical fantasy series with queer rep. First book felt like it relied more on the historical elements as opposed to the fantasy elements. Like it felt like the fantasy was more at the end. So I'm wondering if this book is going to be the same, where now that there's fantasy in the series, maybe fantasy will be more heavily involved in the sequel. It's been a while since I read the first book, so I don't trust myself to give a super good synopsis of the first book off the top of my head, so that's why I'm going to be reading off of the back of this one. A year after an accidentally whirlwind grand tour with her brother Monty, Felicity Montague has returned to England to enroll in medical school. However, her intellect and passion will never be enough for the administrators who see men as the sole guardians of science. But then she learns that a doctor she idolizes is marrying an old friend of hers in Germany. Felicity believes this man could change her future, but she has no money of her own to make the trip. Luckily, a mysterious young woman is willing to pay Felicity's way as long as she's allowed to travel with her. In spite of her suspicions, Felicity agrees, but once the girl's true motives are revealed, Felicity becomes part of a perilous quest that leads them from the German countryside to the promenades of Zurich to secrets lurking beneath the Atlantic. So as the synopsis from this book doesn't involve anything fantasy, it's clear that this book involves more historical elements as opposed to fantasy elements, just like the first book. And it seems like this book will deal with sexism, which will be really interesting. I enjoyed the first book and I'm looking forward to reading this sequel, hopefully soon. I always say hopefully soon, but I have so many like different reading goals and reading challenges that get in the way of me like mood reading. You know, that should be my goal for next year. Don't sign up for any reading challenges and don't participate in any book groups so I can just mood read, because I feel like not mood reading has caused me to not enjoy very many books this year, because we're in June and I've only had 2 5-star reads, and I think that's really disappointing. And most of my star readings for the first 6 months of the year have been 3 stars or less, which is not great, which means that I'm like reading a good number, I'm just not enjoying what I'm reading, which really sucks. And I really need to get back to like my mood reading self who reads things that interest me, because when I read stuff that interests me and that I'm in the mood for, I tend to enjoy it more than when I read stuff for challenges that I feel obligated to do. So yeah. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is by an author that I've met, and this author lives in my city, so like this author is at tons of events that I've been at. I've like seen this author around at Barnes and Noble and stuff. So I think that's really fun to like have some authors in my city that I can see a lot and stuff. And the other book that I read by this author I really enjoyed, so hopefully I'll enjoy this book as much. This book is The Sunbearer Trials. It's by Aiden Thomas. Aiden Thomas is a trans author, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I know this one is queer representation, and it probably is trans representation as well, although I am not 100% sure, because I don't know too much about this book. I read the synopsis once, and I was like, I'm sold. I'm sold. I'm buying this book right now. It sounds so good. And then I haven't looked that much more into the book because I knew that I would like it based on just the one time that I read the synopsis. So I'm going to read the synopsis right now so that all of you can know what this one's about. Oh my gosh, I've never opened this before. That's so pretty. And there's a little skull there. By the way, Cemetery Boys was the other book that I read by this author that I really enjoyed. Okay, now onto the synopsis. Only the most powerful and honorable semidioses get chosen. I'm just a jade. I'm not a real hero. As each new decade begins, the sun's power must be replenished so that Sol can keep traveling along the sky and keep the chaotic obsidian gods at bay. Sol selects 10 of the most worthy semidioses to compete in the Sunbearer Trials. The winner carries light and life to all the temples of Reno del Sol, but the loser has the greatest honor of all. They will be sacrificed to Sol, their body melted down to refuel the sunstones, protecting the world for another 10 years. Theo, a 17-year-old jade semidios and the trans son of the goddess of birds, isn't worried about the trials, at least not for himself. His best friend Nia is a gold semidios and a shoo-in for the trials, and while he trusts her abilities, the odds of becoming the sacrifice is 1 in 10. But then for the first time in over a century, the impossible happens. Sol chooses not 1 but 2 jade competitors, Theo and Theo, the 13-year-old child of the god of bad luck. Now they must compete in 5 trials against gold opponents who are more powerful and better trained. Worst of all, Teo's annoyingly handsome ex-best friend, Aurelio, is favored to win. Teo is determined to get himself and his friends through the trials unscathed for fame, glory, and their own survival. I always forget how to pronounce in Spanish when there's an X. I feel like there's not many names and words with X's that I've learned in Spanish yet, because I'm currently in the middle of learning Spanish for my school. I have to do that for my degree. But having to do that for my degree, when I say semi-dioses, the first part semi is like half, and dioses is god, so half gods, so they're like children of gods. So that's gonna be interesting. I'm excited to see how that turns out, and there is trans rep in here. But I love me a good high stakes tournament. Like, that's one of my favorite things in books, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one soon. The next book is a book that I should have read a while ago, but I'm a chicken for anything that's scary, and that's why I haven't read this book yet. And this book is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. The reason I should have read this book sooner is I actually did this report for my professional writing class that I took, I think it was like last year, and I used Wilder Girls in that report, and I haven't read Wilder Girls. The report was, so this professional writing class, there was one project that you focus on the entire term, and it has to be something applicable to your career, like the type of writing that you would do at your job. I want to be an author, so I had to do this whole project basically selling my book, and to sell my book and advertise my book and get publishers interested in it, I had to include books similar to my own book. There isn't that many that are like super close to what I'm writing, so I just looked up YA dystopian queer books, and this one came up. I think there's sapphic representation in here. The reason I haven't read this one yet is because I believe it's horror as well, but it sounds really interesting. I just need to like tell myself that I can handle this book. For some reason, I can handle like horror movies and shows better than books. I don't know what that says about me, but I think I get too sucked into books, and then I get freaked out by the horror elements in books. The back of this book reads, "It started slow. First the teachers died one by one. Then the talks began to infect the students, turning their bodies strange and foreign. Now, cut off from the rest of the world and left to fend for themselves on their island home, the girls of the Raxter school don't dare wander outside the surrounding fence to where the talks has made the woods wild and dangerous. But when Beat goes missing, Hetty will do anything to find her, even if it means breaking quarantine and braving the horrors that lie beyond. And when she does, Hetty learns that there's more to their story, to their life at Raxter, than she could have ever thought true. So this involves like a plague, like a massive sickness, and quarantining in a school. So I'm thinking that this one will be really good. I just need to tell myself that I can handle it. Also, this cover's so pretty, but something about it also freaks me out. I don't know how to describe it, but something just really freaks me out about this cover. And then one more book to talk about for today's video, and I saved the most popular one for last, and this book is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I have not read Fangirl yet, but I've heard that it doesn't matter if you read Fangirl or Carry On first. So this one is basically like Harry Potter fanfiction is what I've heard, and like Drarry in particular, and I'm a huge Drarry fan, so I'm super excited to read this one. I was actually flipping through this one while my dog was barking, because I had to wait for her to stop barking so I could finish filming, and I noticed that it says book 1. So it's like split into multiple books, which is interesting, and I noticed that it was dual point of view. I also won the second book. I may have won the third book as well. I think it was just the second book though, on like a virtual giveaway, so I have it on iBooks, so I can continue with this series as soon as I finish this first book. I'm gonna read the back of the book to you and tell you what it's about. Simon Snow is the worst chosen one who's ever been chosen. That's what his roommate Baz says, and Baz might be evil and a vampire and a complete git, but he's probably right. Half the time Simon can't make his wand work, and the other half he sets something on fire. His mentor's avoiding him, his girlfriend broke up with him, and there's a magic-eating monster running around wearing Simon's face. Baz would be having a field day with all this if he were here. It's their last year at the Watford School of Magics, and Simon's infuriating nemesis didn't even bother to show up. Carry On is a ghost story, a love story, and a mystery. It is just as much kissing and talking as you'd expect from a Rainbow Rowell novel, but far, far more monsters. So this one sounds like there's going to be bi or pan rep in here, and I know that the main relationship is between two men, so I'm really interested in reading this one, and I think I'm gonna love this one. I've only read one book by Rainbow Rowell so far, and I really liked it, so hopefully I can get around to reading this one soon. So those were 5 of the LGBTQ plus books that I want to read. I will probably be doing a reading vlog for some of these books later, because I'm trying to do like themed reading vlogs on my channel. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm trying. So if you have any LGBTQ plus books that you recommend, feel free to leave them down in the comments section below. I hope all of you are having a great Pride Month, and I will see all of you at my next video, which will hopefully be up next week. Until next time, goodbye!